The fax machine in the back office wouldn't stop printing. When I took the night shift at the RadioShack in Odessa, my boss told me to ignore it. Just let it run, throw away whatever comes through, and don't read any of it. It was junk faxes, he said. Probably some automated system that didn't know RadioShack was basically dead. But I got curious on my second night. I pulled a page from the tray and looked at it. It was an order form, handwritten in shaky pencil, requesting a portable transistor radio, model TRS-1847. The shipping address was a house number on a street that didn't exist in any town I'd ever heard of. And at the bottom, in the same shaky handwriting, it said, "Please hurry. They're getting closer. I can hear them in the walls." The orders kept coming, one every hour, all night long. They were all desperate. Someone needed a CB radio to call for help. Someone needed batteries before the lights go out forever. Someone needed a phone cord to call my daughter one last time. Every order came from an address that didn't exist, asking for products we didn't make anymore, and they all had that same tone of barely contained panic. On my fourth night, I made a mistake. I filled an order. There was a TRS-1847 in the back storage, covered in dust, and the order seemed so desperate that I boxed it up and put it in the outgoing mail like we used to do in the old days. The next fax that came through said, "Thank you. It worked. I'm safe now. But you shouldn't have done that. They know about you now. My name is Wade Carpenter, and I took this job because nobody else wanted it. 23 years old, with a community college degree in nothing useful, living in my aunt's garage apartment off University Boulevard." The RadioShack sat in a dying strip mall between a shuttered Blockbuster and a payday loan place that looked like it laundered more than money. 3 nights a week, midnight to 8 a.m., I sat behind a counter waiting for customers who never came. The store should have closed years ago. Most of them had. But hours kept limping along, selling phone chargers and adapter cables to the handful of old-timers who wandered in during day shifts. Dale Pruitt, the owner, was pushing 70 and looked like he'd been manager since the Carter administration. He'd hired me without an interview, just told me to show up Thursday at 11:45 p.m. for training. Training consisted of showing me where the light switches were, how to work the ancient register, and pointing at the fax machine in the back. "That thing runs all night," he said. "Don't touch it. Don't read what comes out. Just let it pile up and toss it in the morning." "Why not disconnect it?" I asked. Dale's face went blank. "Because it needs to keep running." He left me with a keyring, a list of numbers I'd never need to call, and a manila envelope with my name on it. Inside were 7 handwritten rules on RadioShack letterhead, dated 1994. I read the rules under the fluorescent buzz of the back office, Dale's truck already pulling out of the parking lot. Rule 1. The fax machine must remain on and connected at all times. If it stops printing for more than 15 minutes, unplug it, count to 30, and plug it back in. Do not let the silence last. Rule 2. Never fulfill any orders that come through the fax. Throw them away immediately after reading. The people who send them are not in places you can reach. Rule 3. If the phone rings between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., answer with "RadioShack, how can I help you?" But do not respond to anything the caller says. Stay on the line until they hang up first. Rule 4. If you hear knocking from inside the storage room, ignore it. The room only has one door, and you're standing in front of it. Rule 5. Check the security monitors every hour. If you see someone standing in aisle 3, do not go out to help them. They will leave on their own. Rule 6. The display radio on the counter, the realistic patrolman SW60, must stay tuned to 91.3 FM. If it changes stations by itself, Change it back immediately and apologize to the empty store. Rule 7. Before leaving at 8 a.m., you must say, "Thank you for shopping RadioShack to the store," even if no customers came in. Say it facing the security camera above the counter. I read them twice, waiting for the punchline. Some kind of hazing thing for new employees, but the paper felt old. The ink faded in spots, and Dale's handwriting from today matched the signature at the bottom from 30 years ago. The fax machine coughed out another page. I walked over and picked it up before I could think better of it. Need help. Need a police scanner. Model PRO 2021. Can't call 911 anymore. Something wrong with the phones here. Please send to 4477 Cactus Trail, Monahans. They're in the house now. I can hear them opening doors. Monahans was 25 miles west on I-20. I'd driven through it a dozen times. Cactus Trail sounded like a street you'd find in any West Texas town. But when I pulled up Google Maps on my phone, the street didn't exist. Neither did the address. I crumpled the paper and threw it in the trash. The store felt different at night. During my daytime visits, it had just seemed sad, a relic of the 90s still clinging to life, with its wood-paneled walls and handwritten price tags. But alone, after midnight, the fluorescence made everything look yellow and sick. The aisles of adapter cables and phone cases cast strange shadows. A cardboard cutout of some forgotten radio mascot stared at me from near the batteries, its smile starting to peel away from the cardboard backing. The realistic patrolman SW60 sat on the counter exactly where Dale said it would be. Old shortwave radio, probably worth something to a collector. It was already tuned to 91.3 FM, playing static with occasional bursts of what sounded like Spanish-language talk radio from across the border. At 12:47 a.m., the fax machine went quiet. I checked my phone, waited. The store hummed with the sound of old ventilation and aging electronics, but no mechanical grinding from the back office. 5 minutes. 10. At 14 minutes, I got up from the stool behind the counter and walked back there. The machine's green power lights still glowed. Paper sat ready in the tray, but nothing printed. I put my hand on it and felt warmth, like it had just finished a job, but the paper feed wasn't moving. 15 minutes. I unplugged it from the wall, the sudden silence making my skin prickle. Counted to 30 out loud, my voice sounding too small in the empty store. Plugged it back in. The machine gurgled to life and immediately started printing. But this wasn't an order form. It was a message, printed in landscape orientation across the entire page in capital letters. Why did you send it? Why did you help them? Now they know the door still works. Now they know someone is listening. I grabbed the page, pulse hammering in my neck. Below the message in smaller text: "You broke Rule 2. The transistor radio you mailed on your 4th night created a bridge. The dead zones can reach through now. They've been trying for 30 years. You let them back in." My hand started shaking. I'd mailed that radio 3 days ago. Dropped it in the blue USPS box outside the Stripes gas station on 42nd Street. Felt good about helping someone who sounded terrified. The fax machine started printing again. Another page, then another. All the same message, over and over. "They're coming to the store. They want to thank you." From somewhere in the building, deep in the storage room behind rows of discontinued merchandise, I heard knocking. The knocking came in sets of 3. Hollow thuds against metal shelving, like someone rapping their knuckles against the storage racks in the back room. I stood in the doorway to the office, staring at the storage room door 10 feet away. Rule 4. The room only has one door, and you're standing in front of it. The knocking came again. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. Rhythmic. Patient. I walked back to the counter, forcing myself to move slowly. The patrolman radio hissed static, then caught a fragment of that Spanish station again. A woman's voice talking fast, urgent, then back to white noise. My phone read 1:23 a.m., 6.5 hours until Dale came back. 6.5 hours of following rules I didn't understand to avoid consequences I couldn't imagine. The fax machine kept printing. I could hear it from the front counter, that mechanical grinding sound cycling over and over. I didn't want to look at what it was spitting out. But the pages were piling up, and Rule 1 said to throw them away immediately after reading. I went back. The floor around the fax machine was covered in paper, maybe 30 sheets, all with the same message printed over and over. They're coming to the store. They want to thank you. I gathered them up, hands full of warm paper that smelled faintly of ozone, and shoved them in the trash can. The machine immediately started printing again. Same message. I grabbed that page too, threw it away, and the machine printed another. "Stop," I said to it. My voice cracked. The machine paused, then printed one more page, different this time. "We can't stop. We've been waiting so long." The girl you helped, she used the radio to call out. She found a frequency that worked. Now the bridge is open both ways. We can finally leave. The knocking in the storage room got louder. Not 3 beats anymore. Now it sounded like dozens of hands pounding against metal, a cascading rhythm. I grabbed my phone and called Dale, straight to voicemail. Called again. Same thing. Tried to text him, but the message wouldn't send, no signal, even though my phone showed full bars. The patrolman radio crackled. The static resolved into a voice, clear and close. "RadioShack in Odessa. This is Houston calling. Do you copy? This is 1987. We need help. The store is wrong. There are too many aisles now. We can't find the exit." I lunged for the dial and twisted it. The voice cut off. Static again. I checked the frequency. Still 91.3 FM. I hadn't changed it. The radio had done it by itself. Rule 6. Apologize to the empty store. "I'm sorry," I said, facing the aisles. "I didn't touch it. I'm sorry." The radio stayed quiet. Just static, low and steady. Behind me, the storage room door rattled in its frame. I checked the security monitors at 2 a.m. exactly. 4 small screens showing grainy feeds from cameras covering the entrance, the main sales floor, the counter area, and the back hallway. Everything looked normal. Empty aisles, fluorescent lights creating pools of yellow, cardboard displays casting long shadows. Then I saw movement on the sales floor monitor. Aisle 3. Someone standing there, motionless, facing away from the camera. They wore what looked like a RadioShack employee vest, the red fabric visible even in the washed-out security footage. Rule 5. If you see someone in aisle 3, do not go out to help them. If you like the stories, please hype the videos from a button like this just above the comment section. It helps the videos to get more reach and perform well. It would take just a few seconds and cost nothing, but would help the channel grow even faster. Thank you. I leaned closer to the monitor. The figure didn't move, didn't browse the merchandise, just stood there, shoulders slightly hunched, head tilted down like they were reading something in their hands. The phone rang. I jerked back from the monitors, pulse spiking. The old landline on the counter, the one I didn't think still worked, was ringing with a shrill mechanical bell that seemed too loud for the empty store. 2 a.m., Rule 3. Answer and say the phrase, but don't respond to anything else. Stay on the line until they hang up. I picked up the receiver. RadioShack, how can I help you? Breathing on the other end. Wet, labored breathing like someone crying or choking. Then a voice, distant and crackling like it was coming through a bad connection. "I need batteries. AA, my flashlight went out and I can't see anymore. It's so dark here. Please, I'm at the store, but nobody's here. I'm in aisle 3. Can you help me?" My eyes went to the security monitor. The figure in aisle 3 still stood there, motionless. I didn't respond. Kept the phone pressed to my ear, listening to that awful breathing. "Please," the voice said again, and now it sounded younger. A kid, maybe. "I've been here so long. I came in to buy batteries in 1993, and I got lost. The aisles kept changing. I can still see the exit sign, but I can't reach it. Can you help me? I just need batteries so I can find my way out." I bit the inside of my cheek, tasting copper. Didn't say anything. "Why won't you help me?" The voice shifted, got older, raspier. "We just need help. We've been trapped in the dead zones for so long. All we want is to leave. The radios are bridges. The fax machines are doors. You opened one. You let her out. Now let us out too." The figure in aisle 3 turned around. I couldn't see their face on the grainy monitor, but I saw them lift something to their head. A phone. The same phone I was holding. They were calling me from inside the store. "I'm right here," the voice whispered. "I'm in aisle 3. Come help me. Come see where we've been." I kept the phone pressed to my ear, watching the monitor. The figures started walking toward the camera, moving with a strange, jerky gait, like their joints didn't work right. They got closer, features starting to resolve in the poor video quality. They were wearing a RadioShack vest, name tag pinned to the front. And their face looked wrong, like a photograph of a person that had been left in the sun too long, features bleached and distorted. "We used to be employees," the voice said. "Then we became customers. Then we became lost. Now we're part of the store, part of the network. All the Radio Shacks that closed, they didn't really close. They just fell into the spaces between, and we fell with them." The figure stopped directly in front of the aisle. 3 camera, staring up at it, staring through the lens, through the monitor, directly at me. "You're going to help us," they said. "Because if you don't, you'll become one of us. The store will keep you, just like it kept Dale. Just like it kept everyone who worked the night shift and broke the rules." The line went dead, dial tone screaming in my ear. On the monitor, aisle 3 was empty again. I hung up the phone with shaking hands and looked at the clock. 2:47 a.m. Still 5 hours until sunrise. The fax machine started printing again. New fax wasn't an order form, it was a hand-drawn map. I spread it across the counter under the sickly fluorescent glow. Someone had sketched out what looked like a circuit diagram, but instead of electronic components, they'd labeled each node with store locations. Radio Shack Odessa, Radio Shack Midland, Radio Shack Lubbock. Lines connected them all in a sprawling network that covered West Texas like a spider web. At the bottom, in cramped handwriting, "This is what they built in 1984. Corporate didn't know what they were doing. They thought they were just creating an efficient distribution network. But the frequencies bled together. The stores started connecting in other ways, ways that don't follow normal geography." Another page printed. I grabbed it before it hit the tray. "My name is Patricia Hodges. I was assistant manager at the Monaghan's location. That was 30 years ago. I've been here ever since. Wherever here is. It looks like a Radio Shack. Sounds like one. Smells like old carpet and soldering wire. But the doors don't lead outside. They lead to other stores, or to places that used to be stores, or to nowhere at all." The knocking from the storage room had stopped. That felt worse somehow. At least the noise told me where the danger was. When Radio Shack Corporate installed the satellite communication system in 1984, they networked every store in the region. Inventory tracking, point-of-sale terminals, fax machines for orders. It was supposed to be revolutionary, but the frequencies they used were wrong. They opened channels between stores that shouldn't have been possible. Dead zones, spaces where electromagnetic fields overlap and reality gets thin. Some employees fell through. We got trapped in the network. I read the page twice, trying to make sense of it. Patricia Hodges. The name felt familiar. I walked back to the office and started searching through the filing cabinets Dale kept against the wall. Old employee records, dating back to the 80s. There were dozens of names I didn't recognize, people who'd worked here decades before I was born. Patricia Hodges, hired February 1983, transferred to Monagham's location April 1984. Last day of work, November 17, 1987. Reason for termination: no call, no show. 3 consecutive shifts missed. I pulled out more files. James Torres, hired 1985, disappeared 1989. Linda Ramirez, hired 1986, disappeared 1991. Michael Chen, Chen was one of the band names. Let me change that. Michael Briscoe, hired 1988, disappeared 1994. The pattern repeated through dozens of employees across multiple West Texas locations. All of them listed as no call, no show. All of them just vanished during night shifts. The fax machine coughed out another page. Patricia again. We're not ghosts. We're not dead. We're stuck in a loop. The stores keep us here because they need us. The network needs operators. When you fulfilled that order, when you sent the radio through the system, you created a bridge strong enough for me to reach across. I've been trying to contact someone on the outside for years. The fax machine is my only connection. I sat down on the office chair, legs feeling weak. The clock on the wall read 3:15 a.m. Another page printed. The others trapped here. They've been here longer than me. Some of them forgot they were human. They became part of the store, part of the network. They answer the phones. They stock the shelves. They stand in the aisles waiting for customers who never come. The rules your boss gave you? Those are protections, ways to avoid getting pulled in. But you broke Rule 2. Now the dead zones know you exist. Now they're trying to bring you here with us. From the sales floor, I heard footsteps. Slow and deliberate, moving between the aisles. I checked the security monitors. Aisle 3 showed nothing. Aisle 1 showed nothing. But Aisle 2, someone was there now. Another figure in a RadioShack vest, browsing through packages of phone jacks like they were shopping. Rule 5 only mentioned Aisle 3. It didn't say anything about other aisles. I grabbed the patrolman radio from the counter and turned up the volume. Static, then fragments of voices. Need to get home before dark. Can't find the exit. Been walking for hours. All the doors lead back to electronics. The voices overlapped, dozens of them, all scared and confused. I twisted the dial, trying to find 91.3 FM again, but every frequency was the same. Voices from the dead zones, trapped employees calling out across years and distances. The phone rang. I looked at the clock. 3:47 a.m., not between 2 and 4, not covered by Rule 3. I picked it up anyway. Wade. Dale's voice, but distorted, like he was talking through water. You're still at the store. Where are you? I asked. I've been trying to call. Doesn't matter where I am. Listen to me carefully. Do not leave the building. Do not try to run. The dead zones are active tonight, and if you step outside, you might not step into the real parking lot. You might step into one of the between places. What the hell is going on, Dale? I should have told you before I hired you. Should have warned you. But we need people to work the night shift. We need someone to keep the network running. If all the stores close, if all the employees disappear, the dead zones will collapse inward. Everything trapped in them will spill out into the real world. You understand? We're holding them back. You knew people disappeared. It's been happening since 1987. Corporate never acknowledged it. They just kept transferring employees between stores, hoping nobody would notice the pattern. When RadioShack started dying, when stores started closing for real, some of us stayed behind. We keep the night shifts running. We follow the rules. We keep the network stable. Patricia Hodges sent me faxes. She says there's 30 years worth of people trapped in there. Silence on the line. Then, Patricia's still alive? She says she is. Says she's trying to reach someone on the outside. Wade, listen to me. Patricia was the best electronics technician we had. If anyone could find a way to communicate across the dead zones, it'd be her. But you can't trust anything that comes through the fax machine. Those messages might be from her. They might be from something pretending to be her. The dead zones are old now. They've learned to mimic us. The figure in aisle 2 moved closer to the camera. I could see their face now. Young, maybe 25. Name tag read James. He looked up at the camera and smiled, but his eyes were wrong. Too reflective, like polished glass. "What do I do?" I asked Dale. "Follow the rules. All of them. Don't break any more. And when I come back at 8, we'll talk about whether you can handle this job. Most people can't. Most people quit after the first night. But we need someone, Wade. We always need someone." He hung up. I put the phone down and looked at the monitors. James was gone from aisle 2. But now there were figures in aisles 1, 4, and 6. All wearing RadioShack vests. All standing motionless, facing the cameras. The fax machine started printing again. I walked back to read it, each step feeling heavier than the last. "Wade, this is Patricia. I know you're scared. I know this doesn't make sense, but I've been studying the network for 30 years. I know how it works. I know what frequencies they used. I know how to close the dead zones permanently. But I need your help. And it's going to require you to break every rule Dale gave you, starting with Rule 7. At 8 a.m., when you're supposed to thank the store, you need to do something different. You need to rig every electronic device in the building into one massive signal broadcaster. Overload the network. Burn it out. It will destroy the store. It might destroy every RadioShack still connected to the grid, but it will seal the cracks in reality. It will free everyone trapped here, and it will stop the dead zones from spreading. I'm sending you the instructions now. Study them. Decide if you're brave enough, because if you don't do this, the dead zones will eventually pull you in, and you'll spend the next 30 years sending faxes to someone else, begging them to be braver than you were. The machine kept printing. Page after page of circuit diagrams, frequency calculations, and step-by-step instructions for turning the dying RadioShack into an electromagnetic bomb. I gathered them up, hands trembling, and started reading. Patricia's instructions were meticulous. Every page covered in technical diagrams, frequency calculations, and detailed explanations of how the 1984 satellite system worked. She'd spent 3 decades trapped in the dead zone studying the network from the inside, mapping its weak points. The plan was simple in concept, horrifying in execution. Take every device in the store that could transmit or receive a signal: radios, CB units, wireless routers, old cell phones, walkie-talkies, even the electronic pest deterrents on the clearance shelf, and wire them together in a specific configuration. Set them all to transmit on overlapping frequencies simultaneously. The resulting electromagnetic surge would overload the network, collapse the dead zones, and theoretically free everyone trapped inside. It would also destroy every RadioShack still connected to the grid, including this one. I spread the pages across the counter, trying to understand the circuit diagrams. My community college classes in basic electronics suddenly felt inadequate. But Patricia had written everything in clear steps, assuming I knew nothing. She'd been planning this for years, waiting for someone on the outside to help her. The clock read 4:23 a.m., 3.5 hours until Dale returned. 3.5 hours to decide whether to trust a woman who'd been trapped in an alternate dimension for 30 years, or trust the old man who'd knowingly sent people to work in a store that swallowed employees. The figures in the aisles hadn't moved. I counted 7 of them now on the security monitors, all wearing RadioShack vests, all standing perfectly still. They faced different directions, some toward the cameras, some toward the walls, one staring directly at the ceiling, waiting for something. The storage room door creaked open. I spun around, a pulse hammering in my throat. The door I'd been watching for hours, the door that nobody should be able to open from the inside, swung slowly outward. The darkness beyond looked thicker than it should, like the fluorescent light couldn't penetrate more than a few inches into the room. Nobody came out. The door just stayed open, inviting me in. Rule 4. Ignore the knocking. Don't go inside. But the door was open now, and I could hear something from inside the storage room. Not knocking. Voices. Dozens of them, whispering in unison. Help us. Please help us. We've been here so long. We just want to go home. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, pointing it at the storage room entrance. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating metal shelving units packed with discontinued merchandise. Everything looked normal. Boxes of old phone chargers, pallets of unsold GPS units from 2009, dusty CB radios still in their packaging. But the voices kept whispering, seeming to come from deeper in the room, from spaces that shouldn't exist in a storage area this small. I checked Patricia's instructions again. Step 1. Gather all the transmitting devices from the sales floor and storage room. If I was going to do this, I needed to go in there anyway. The patrolman radio on the counter crackled to life without anyone touching it. Patricia's voice came through clearer than before. Wade, I know you're scared. I was too. But I've watched the network grow for 30 years. I've seen the dead zones expand. There used to be 3 locations connected to the grid. Now there are 47. Every time a store closes in the real world, it opens in the between places. And every time someone breaks the rules, the connection gets stronger. You can stop it, but you have to act now, before the shift ends. How do I know you're real? I said to the radio. How do I know you're not something pretending to be Patricia? Static, then her voice again, softer. You don't. You'll have to trust me. But think about this. Why would the dead zones want you to destroy the network? They need it to exist. They feed off it. If I were trying to trap you, I'd tell you to break Rule 7 and stay in the store forever. I'm telling you to burn it down. The logic makes sense, but nothing about this situation made sense. I grabbed a shopping cart from near the entrance and wheeled it toward the storage room. The voices grew louder as I approached, overlapping whispers that made it hard to think straight. Finally, someone came. We've been waiting. Don't leave us here. It's so cold in the between places. I stepped through the doorway, flashlight sweeping across the shelves. The room extended back farther than it should, way farther. The strip mall couldn't be more than 60 feet deep, but the storage room seemed to stretch for hundreds of yards, rows of shelving disappearing into darkness. Between the shelves, I saw movement. Figures in RadioShack vests, restocking inventory that would never be sold. They moved slowly, mechanically, picking up boxes and placing them on shelves in patterns that made no sense. One person was stacking satellite dishes in a pyramid. Another was arranging phone cords into elaborate spirals on the floor. None of them looked at me. They just kept working, trapped in routines that had lost all meaning decades ago. I found the CB radios on the shelf where Dale's inventory sheet said they'd be. 6 realistic TRC-418 units still in their boxes. I loaded them into the cart. Then the police scanners. The old bag phones from the 90s, a box of wireless routers that never sold. Everything Patricia's instructions specified. The trapped employees kept working around me, never acknowledging my presence. I saw their name tags as I passed. James Torres, Linda Ramirez, Kenneth Webb. Names from the employee files I'd found. People who disappeared during night shifts across the years. One of them finally looked up as I wheeled the cart past. A woman in her 50s, hair still styled in an 80s perm, makeup faded. Her name tag read, Patricia Hodges. She smiled at me, not the predatory smile from the figure in aisle 3, a real smile, tired and sad and hopeful. "You got my faxes," she said. Her voice had the same quality as on the radio, like it was coming from very far away. "Are you real?" I asked. "Real as anything here. We're not dead, Wade. We're just lost, stuck in a place that exists between frequencies. But if you do what I told you, if you overload the network, it'll collapse these spaces back into normal reality. We'll be free. It'll only last a few seconds, just long enough for us to cross over before the whole thing burns out." Dale said the network is holding the dead zones back, that if it collapses, everything trapped inside will spill out. Patricia's smile faded. Dale's not wrong, but he's not right either. The network isn't holding us back. It's keeping us here, using us as power sources to maintain itself. The longer we stay, the more we forget who we were. Eventually, we become part of the system completely. I've been here 30 years. Some of the others have been here longer. We're running out of time. Behind her, one of the other employees dropped a box. It hit the floor with a wet, meaty sound instead of cardboard on concrete. The box split open, spilling not electronics but something else. Something organic that writhed and pulsed. Patricia saw me staring. That's what happens when you've been here too long. You start to become part of the dead zone. Physical laws stop applying the same way. Another 5 years and I'll be like that too. Please, Wade, don't let us become things that can't remember being human. I loaded the last of the equipment into the cart. What about Dale? What happens to him? Dale made his choice 30 years ago. He stayed behind voluntarily to maintain the network. He thinks he's protecting the world from us. He doesn't understand that we're the victims, not the threat. I wheeled the cart back toward the storage room door. It seemed much closer now, like the room had contracted while I wasn't paying attention. The other employees went back to their meaningless tasks, stocking shelves in the infinite dark. Before I left, I looked back at Patricia. How do I know this will work? You don't, she said, but doing nothing guarantees we stay here forever. At least this way, we have a chance. The door back to the store stood open, fluorescent lights spilling through. I pushed the cart through and heard the door slam shut behind me. The clock read 5:14 a.m. Less than 3 hours to build Patricia's bomb and decide whether to burn down the only barrier between reality and whatever the dead zones had become. The fax machine started printing again. New instructions, more technical specifications. And at the bottom of the page, in Patricia's handwriting, I'm trusting you with all of our lives. Please don't let us down. I cleared the counter and spread out Patricia's circuit diagrams, weighing them down with old cash register tape dispensers. The shopping cart sat beside me, filled with every transmitting device I could find. CB radios, police scanners, wireless routers, even the electronic pest deterrents that supposedly worked on frequencies only rodents could hear. Patricia's instructions required me to wire them all together in a specific pattern, creating a cascading feedback loop. Each device would amplify the others, building to a frequency surge powerful enough to collapse the electromagnetic field holding the dead zones together. The math was beyond me, but her diagrams were clear enough. Red wire to red terminal, black to ground. Set each device to transmit on these specific frequencies. I started with the CB radios, pulling them from their boxes. The plastic packaging crinkled too loud in the quiet store. My hands shook as I stripped wire casings with the multi-tool from the clearance bin. The figures on the security monitors started moving, not walking toward the cameras anymore. They were moving between aisles, converging toward the front counter. Toward me. I worked faster, connecting the first CB radio to a police scanner using Patricia's configuration. The soldering iron I'd found in the back heated up, filling the air with that distinct smell of burning flux. I'd done basic electronics work in community college, built a few simple circuits. This was more complex, but Patricia had labeled everything. The phone rang. I ignored it. Kept working. It rang 17 times before stopping. The patrolman radio crackled. "Wade, they know what you're doing." Patricia's voice, urgent. "The network is trying to stop you. Don't listen to anything you hear from now on. Just follow the instructions. How much time do I have?" "You need to activate the device at exactly 8 a.m. That's when the network pulses for the morning inventory sync. All the stores connect simultaneously. If you overload it during the pulse, the collapse will spread to every location on the grid. But if you activate it too early, you'll only destroy the store. The dead zones will survive." I checked the clock. 5:47 a.m. 2 hours and 13 minutes to finish building this thing. The first figure emerged from aisle 3. I saw him in my peripheral vision. Young guy, maybe 19, wearing a RadioShack vest with a name tag I couldn't read from this distance. He walked toward the counter with that same jerky, wrong-jointed movement I'd seen on the security monitors. "You're making a mistake," he said. His voice sounded normal, conversational. "Dale told you what happens if the network collapses. Everything trapped inside spills out. Do you want that? Do you want us flooding into your reality?" I connected another wire, hands steady despite the fear making my ribs feel too tight. "Patricia says you're already bleeding through, that the dead zones are expanding. Patricia's been gone too long. She doesn't remember what it's like to be human. She's become something else, Wade. Something that wants to break free, no matter the cost." 2 more figures stepped out from other aisles. A middle-aged woman with blonde hair, an older man with a beard going gray, both in RadioShack vests, both moving toward the counter with that same eerie synchronization. "The network protects you," the blonde woman said. "It keeps us contained, keeps the between places separate from the real world. If you destroy it, we'll come through. All of us. Every employee who ever got lost in the dead zones. Hundreds of us. And we're not all as human as we used to be." I finished wiring the third CB radio and reached for the bag phones. The old Motorola units from the 90s, each one as big as a brick. Patricia's notes said they transmitted on frequencies the original network used, frequencies that would resonate with the 1984 satellite system. The bearded man reached the counter. Up close, I could see his name tag, Michael Briscoe, one of the names from the employee files. Disappeared 1994. "You don't understand what you're doing," he said. His face looked normal until he smiled, and I saw that his teeth went back too far, rows and rows of them like a shark. "The dead zones aren't just empty spaces. They're hungry. They've been feeding on us for decades, getting stronger. If you break the network, they won't just release us. They'll release themselves. My hands fumbled the wire. The soldering iron slipped, burning my thumb. I hissed and jerked back. The 3 figures moved closer, not threatening, not yet. Just standing there, watching me work with empty expressions. "We don't want to hurt you," the blonde woman said. "We were like you once. We had lives, families, but this is our reality now, and we've learned to accept it. You will too, if you just put down the tools and walk away." "Patricia said you forget who you were," I said, not looking at them. Kept my eyes on the wiring diagram. "She said you become part of the system." "Patricia's wrong. We remember everything. Every shift we worked, every customer we helped, every moment of our lives before we fell through. We remember it all. That's what makes it bearable." I connected the bag phones to the circuit, watching the diagram Patricia had drawn. The configuration was starting to take shape. A web of devices all feeding into the patrolman radio at the center, which would act as the broadcast amplifier. The figures surrounded the counter now. 7 of them. Maybe more. I didn't want to count. They stood in a loose circle, watching me work with those 2 reflective eyes. The phone rang again. This time I answered it, tucking it between my shoulder and ear while my hands kept working. "Wade, thank God." Dale's voice panicked. "Get out of the store right now. Don't listen to anything Patricia told you. She's not trying to free people. She's trying to tear down the barriers between dimensions. She said you stayed behind voluntarily, that you're maintaining the network." "I stayed because someone had to. Because if all the stores close, if nobody keeps running the night shifts, the dead zones will collapse on their own. It's already happening. Every month, another RadioShack shuts down for good. Another anchor point disappears. We're running out of time, Wade. We need people like you to help us hold the line, not destroy it." I wired in the wireless routers, setting each one to maximum broadcast strength, according to Patricia's notes. "How many people have disappeared, Dale? How many employees have you sent into dead zones?" Silence on the line. Then, "Fewer than will die if you do what Patricia wants. The dead zones don't just trap people. They warp them, change them, make them into things that shouldn't exist in normal reality. You've seen them, the ones standing around you right now. Look at them, Wade. Really look at them. They're not human anymore." I looked up. The 7 figures stood perfectly still, their faces pleasant and neutral. But when I really focused, I saw the wrongness. The way their skin looked like latex pulled too tight over frames that didn't quite fit. The way their eyes reflected light at angles that didn't match the fluorescence overhead. The way they breathed in perfect unison, like they were all connected to the same set of lungs. "They're suffering," I said. "They're gone. What's left isn't them anymore. It's the dead zones wearing their shapes. And if you release them, they'll spread. They'll infect other people, turn other places into between spaces. Patricia's plan doesn't close the dead zones. It breaks them open. She said the network uses trapped people as power sources. It does. And that's horrible. But it's better than the alternative. It's containment, Wade. We're keeping something dangerous locked away. Your job isn't to free them. It's to make sure they stay trapped." I set the phone down without hanging up, Dale's voice still pleading from the speaker. The device was almost complete. Just needed to wire the electronic pest deterrents into the grid. Patricia said their ultrasonic frequencies would create harmonic interference that would amplify the overload. The figures around the counter started moving closer, their circle tightening. "Please don't do this," one of them said. Female voice, young. "We're begging you." We don't want to become something worse. Patricia said the network is expanding, that more stores are opening in the dead zones. Patricia's lying. Or she doesn't understand anymore. She's been gone too long. The dead zones change you, make you forget what it means to be human, make you think freedom is worth any cost. I twisted the final wire connection and checked Patricia's diagram one more time. Everything was in place. Every device connected, all feeding into the patrolman radio at the center. The clock read 7:23 a.m. 37 minutes until the morning inventory pulse. The fax machine printed one final page. I walked back to get it, pushing through the circle of figures. They didn't stop me. Just watched with those wrong eyes as I grabbed the paper from the tray. Patricia's handwriting, shaky now. Wade, I know they're trying to convince you to stop. I know they're telling you I'm the real threat. Maybe they're right. Maybe I have been here too long. Maybe I've forgotten what it means to be human. But I still remember what it's like to have a choice. They don't. The network took that from them. It made them into defenders of their own prison. Don't let them make you a defender too. At 8 a.m., turn on the device. Give us one chance to be free, even if it means risking everything. That's what humanity is. The ability to choose risk over safety. To choose freedom over survival. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. Walked back to the counter. The figures parted to let me through, their circle opening like a mouth. What's it going to be, Wade? Dale's voice from the phone, barely above a whisper. Are you going to trust someone who's been trapped in a nightmare for 30 years? Or are you going to trust me? I looked at the device on the counter, then at the clock, then at the 7 figures standing around me, wearing the faces of people who disappeared decades ago. I'm going to trust myself, I said, and I started setting the frequencies. The patrolman radio sat at the center of the web, every device feeding into it through Patricia's carefully designed circuit. I set the frequency dial according to her final instructions, 91.3 FM, the same station Rule 6 told me never to change. That frequency was the anchor point. The original transmission wavelength the 1984 satellite system used to link all the stores together. 7 minutes until 8 a.m. The figures around the counter hadn't moved. They stood like mannequins, watching me adjust dials and check connections. The blonde woman's mouth moved slightly, whispering something I couldn't hear. The bearded man's fingers twitched at his sides, the joints bending backwards in ways human fingers shouldn't. I grabbed the power strip from behind the counter and plugged in all 6 CB radios simultaneously. They hummed to life, displays glowing green in the fluorescent light. Then the police scanners, the bag phones, the routers. Each device adding its voice to a growing electric symphony. The store's lights flickered. You feel that? One of the figures said. Male voice, coming from everywhere at once. That's reality trying to decide which version of itself to be. This place exists in both worlds right now. Your world and ours. When you activate that device, you're going to tear the membrane between them. I checked Patricia's final page of instructions. At exactly 8 a.m., I needed to turn on all the pest deterrents simultaneously and broadcast a specific sequence of tones through the patrolman radio. The ultrasonic frequencies would create a harmonic cascade, amplifying the electromagnetic pulse until it reached critical mass. 6 minutes. The fax machine started printing, but not in the back office. The sound came from everywhere, the walls, the ceiling, underneath the floor. Dozens of phantom fax machines grinding out pages in perfect synchronization. The printed sheets materialized out of thin air, drifting down like snow. All of them blank, except for a single word repeated across every page. Stop, 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 stop. The network is scared, I said. The network can't be scared, the blonde woman replied. It's not alive. But we are, and we're terrified. Not of dying. We're already dead in every way that matters. We're terrified of what comes after. The spaces between the dead zones, Wade. The places that exist in the cracks. That's where we'll end up if you destroy our anchor points. 5 minutes. My phone buzzed. Text from Dale, somehow getting through now. I'm pulling into the parking lot. Don't activate it. Give me 5 minutes to explain. I looked at the security monitor showing the parking lot. Dale's truck pulled into the space near the entrance, the old Ford that had been there every morning of my short employment. He got out, moving fast for a man his age, and headed for the door. But behind his truck, the parking lot looked wrong. The asphalt rippled like water. The streetlights bent at angles that made my eyes hurt. And there were other vehicles now. Cars from different decades, a 70s station wagon, a 50s pickup, all of them parked in spaces that shouldn't exist because the lot wasn't that big. Dale yanked open the door, setting off the entry chime. He looked at the device on the counter, at the figures standing around me, at the fax pages drifting down from nowhere. Jesus, Wade, you actually built it. Patricia's instructions were clear. Patricia's instructions are going to kill people. He walked toward the counter, hands raised peacefully. Real people, in the real world. That electromagnetic pulse isn't going to just collapse the dead zones. It's going to fry every electronic device within a mile radius. Phones, cars, medical equipment. There's a hospital 8 blocks from here. You're going to shut down life support machines. Kill people who have nothing to do with this. I hadn't thought about that. Patricia's pages hadn't mentioned collateral damage. 4 minutes. She lied to you, Dale said, reading my expression. Or she didn't care. When you've been trapped in the between places long enough, other people stop being real to you. You become the center of your own universe. Patricia wants out, and she'll sacrifice anyone to make it happen. The patrolman radio crackled. Patricia's voice, desperate. He's lying, Wade. The pulse is contained to the network frequency. It only affects devices connected to the original 1984 system. Normal electronics will be fine. He's trying to scare you into stopping. How do you know? I asked the radio. Have you tested it? Silence. Then, no, but I've studied the network for 30 years. I understand the frequencies. Trust me. Dale reached into his jacket and pulled out a piece of paper, old and yellowed. He slid it across the counter toward me. This is from 1987, when we first realized what was happening. Corporate brought in engineers to study the dead zones. This is their report. I picked it up, eyes scanning the text. Technical jargon I barely understood, but certain phrases stood out. Catastrophic resonance cascade. Unpredictable collateral effects. Recommend immediate shutdown of all network systems. They wanted to shut it down, Dale said, back in '87 when it first started trapping people. But the cost was too high. Shutting down the network would have required destroying every RadioShack in the region simultaneously. The electromagnetic feedback would have fried the power grid for 6 counties. Hospitals, schools, homes, everything. So you just let people keep disappearing instead. We made the rules. We tried to protect people. Anyone who followed the rules survived their shifts. It was the ones who got curious, who broke protocol, who ended up trapped. Like you did when you mailed that radio. 3 minutes. The figures around the counter started moving again, circling slowly. Their movements synced up, 7 people walking in perfect unison like dancers who'd practiced for years. "We were curious too," one of them said. "We broke the rules. We thought we knew better, and look what it got us." "But you're still conscious," I said. "Still aware." Patricia says, "If we don't free you now, you'll fade completely, become part of the network. Better that than what happens if you activate that device," the blonde woman said. She reached up and touched her face, fingers pressing into skin that dimpled like clay. "We're held together by the network now. Our molecules exist half in your reality, half in the between places. If you sever that connection suddenly, we don't know what happens to us. We might dissipate. We might collapse. We might turn inside out and feel every second of it." The bearded man nodded. "Patricia thinks she's figured it all out, but she's wrong. The network isn't keeping us trapped. It's keeping us alive, in our own way." 2 minutes. I looked at the device on the counter, at Dale standing across from me, old and tired and scared, at the 7 figures circling like sharks, at the fax pages still drifting down from impossible places. The patrolman radio spoke again. "Wade, please. I know you're confused. I know they're giving you reasons to doubt. But think about this. Every day you delay, more people get trapped. Every night, shift at every RadioShack still operating, there's a chance someone else falls through. You have the chance to end it, to make sure nobody else ends up like us." "And how many people die in the process?" Dale asked. "How many kids in that hospital 8 blocks away? How many people on life support? How many cars crash when their electronics fail at highway speeds? You going to live with that, Wade?" 1 minute. My hands shook. I reached for the power switch on the pest deterrents, the final component that would start the cascade. "Don't," Dale said. Not threatening, just pleading. "Please. There has to be another way." "There isn't," Patricia's voice from the radio. "I've looked for 30 years. This is the only way to break the network permanently. At 8 a.m. during the inventory pulse, when all the stores sync up. It's now or never, Wade. 30 seconds. The figures stopped circling. They all turned to look at me, 7 pairs of wrong eyes reflecting the fluorescent light. "Make your choice," they said in unison. "But understand that either way, people suffer. Either way, someone pays the price. That's what this is. Not good versus evil, just different kinds of pain." 15 seconds. I put my hand on the power switch, checked the clock on the wall, watched the second hand sweep toward 12. 10 seconds. Dale backed away from the counter, hands up. "Whatever you decide, I won't stop you. It's your choice. Just know what you're choosing." 5 seconds. Patricia's voice, barely a whisper. "Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for giving us a chance." 3, 2, 1. I flipped the switch. The pest deterrents whined to life, their ultrasonic frequencies inaudible but felt in the bones. The CB radio started transmitting. The police scanners locked onto the network frequency. The bag phones, the routers, every device feeding into the patrolman radio at the center. The electromagnetic cascade began. Reality started to scream. The patrolman radio exploded first. Not with fire or smoke, but with light. Pure white light that shouldn't exist in nature, spilling from the speaker grill like liquid. The connected devices followed in sequence. CB radios erupting in cascading sparks. Police scanners screaming feedback at frequencies that made blood leak from my nose. Bag phones crackling with energy that turned their plastic casings translucent. The 7 figures around the counter started screaming. Their bodies convulsed, skin rippling like water as the network that held them together began tearing apart. The blonde woman collapsed, her RadioShack vest melting into her flesh. The bearded man grabbed his head, fingers sinking into his skull like it was made of wet sand. They weren't dying. They were unbecoming, reverting to whatever they'd been before the dead zones trapped them in semi-solid form. Dale backed toward the door, shielding his eyes from the light. God help us. You actually did it. The store itself began to change. The walls rippled, wood paneling peeling away to reveal layers underneath. Older versions of the store. Decades of renovations, all existing simultaneously. I saw the original 1970s layout, then the 80s remodel, then versions that had never existed in our reality. Aisles stretched and compressed. The ceiling lifted away, revealing not roof tiles, but an infinite expanse of static-filled sky. The fax machine in the back office printed one final message. I could hear it over the chaos, that familiar grinding sound. I grabbed the page as it emerged. This is Patricia. The collapse is spreading faster than I calculated. Every RadioShack on the network is experiencing the cascade simultaneously. You need to get out now, Wade. The building is going to implode. The electromagnetic energy has nowhere to go but inward. What about you? I shouted at the page as if she could hear me. What about the trapped people? The page grew warm in my hands. New text appeared, printing itself in real time without the fax machine. We're coming through. Not to your world, to the spaces between. But we're together now. All of us. We can feel each other. We're not alone anymore. That's enough. That's more than we had. Thank you. The 7 figures around the counter started to dissolve. Not violently, gently, like sugar in water. Their screams faded to whispers, then to nothing. Where each of them stood, the air shimmered with static, and I saw faces in the distortion. Hundreds of faces. All the employees who disappeared over decades, finally seeing each other, finally connecting. Then they were gone. The floor beneath my feet cracked, not breaking apart but opening into spaces that shouldn't exist. Gaps in reality showing glimpses of the between places. I saw RadioShacks in those gaps, infinite variations of the same store, extending in all directions. Some looked normal. Some looked like M.C. Escher drawings, aisles spiraling into impossible geometries. Some were empty, except for the static. Dale grabbed my arm. The parking lot. Now. We ran for the door as the building groaned around us. The fluorescent lights shattered in sequence, raining glass. The security monitors showed feeds from stores that didn't exist. Locations trapped in the dead zones broadcasting their final moments. I saw employees fleeing from collapsing buildings across West Texas. Saw stores in Midland, Lubbock, Amarillo, all experiencing the same cascade. The device on the counter was glowing now, each component burning white-hot. The electromagnetic energy built to critical mass, feeding back into itself, amplifying with every microsecond. We hit the door and stumbled into the parking lot. The morning sun had risen, but it looked wrong. Too red, too close, like it was being pulled toward the store by the collapsing electromagnetic field. Dale's truck started on its own, engine revving. Every car in the lot did the same. Their electronics sparked and died, radios blaring static before falling silent. But nothing in the hospital 8 blocks away. No distant screams, no cars crashing on University Boulevard. Patricia had been right about that at least. The cascade was contained to the network frequency. The RadioShack building pulsed with light, the entire structure glowing like a dying star. Through the windows, I saw the interior folding in on itself, space compressing, reality collapsing back to a single point. The dead zones were closing. all of them at once. And then, from somewhere deep in the frequency spectrum I couldn't quite hear, came a sound. Not voices, not static, something else. The sound of trapped spaces being sealed shut, of cracks in reality healing over, of barriers being restored. The building imploded, not with an explosion, with a vacuum collapse, all that electromagnetic energy sucking inward in a fraction of a second. The walls, the roof, the merchandise, the memories, everything compressed to a single point of light, hovering where the store used to be. Then the light went out. Where the RadioShack had stood, there was now just an empty concrete pad and a scorched outline on the ground. No debris, no fire, just absence. My phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number. "This is Patricia Hodges. I don't know how I'm sending this, but I wanted you to know we're free. Not in your world, somewhere else. The spaces between the dead zones collapsed together and made something new. We're building our own place now. Building it right this time. No rules, no traps. Just us and the static. Thank you for being brave enough to trust me." Another text followed. "P.S. Check the news. Every RadioShack still operating just went dark. All of them at once. The network is gone. No more dead zones. No more traps. You've saved more people than you'll ever know." Dale sat on the curb next to his truck, head in his hands. 30 years, he said. 30 years I maintained that network. Thought I was protecting people. Turns out I was just guarding a prison. I sat down next to him. My hands still shook. My ears rang from frequencies I'd felt more than heard. But the sun was warm on my face. Real sun, not filtered through dying fluorescent lights. "Were you ever trapped?" I asked him. "For a while. In 1987, when it first started happening. I fell through, spent 3 days in the between places before I found my way back. That's how I knew the rules worked. I'd experienced it, but I never told anyone because I thought." He trailed off. "I thought I was being a hero, keeping the danger contained, but I was just traumatized and scared." My phone buzzed again. Another message from Patricia's unknown number. "One more thing. The device you built, the configuration I gave you, save it. Write it down. There are other networks out there, other retail chains that accidentally opened doors they shouldn't have. Best Buy, Circuit City before it closed, even some of the old Blockbuster locations. If you ever hear about employees disappearing during closing shifts, you'll know what to do." I looked at Dale. "Did you know about other networks?" "Suspected. Never confirmed. RadioShack was the oldest, the most developed. But electronics retail in the 80s and 90s, all those companies were experimenting with the same satellite networking technology. They all could have created their own dead zones. The sun climbed higher. Traffic picked up on University Boulevard. The world kept turning, oblivious to the fact that a pocket dimension had just collapsed in a strip mall parking lot. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Wade?" Patricia's voice, clearer than it had ever been through the fax machine or radio. "Can you hear me? How are you calling me?" We're learning to use the frequencies ourselves now. The static isn't random. It's a language. We're figuring it out. Listen, I need to warn you about something. When the network collapsed, it sealed most of the dead zones. But there were some spaces too far gone, too warped. Those are still out there. Pockets of wrong reality that didn't collapse back. If you ever find yourself in a store that feels off, where the aisles don't quite make sense, where the exits lead to places they shouldn't, get out immediately. Don't try to fix it. Just run. Will I ever see you again? I don't think so. We're too far outside your reality now. But Wade, thank you. For 30 years, I've been trying to reach someone who would listen. Someone who would take the risk. You gave all of us a second chance. Even if it's not the life we had before, it's better than being trapped alone. The call disconnected. Dale stood up, dusting off his jeans. I should report this to someone. Corporate, police. Though I don't know what I'd tell them. The store imploded into another dimension. Tell them it was an electrical fire, I said. Tell them the wiring was old and something overloaded. They'll believe that. He nodded, looked at the empty concrete pad where his store used to be, where he'd spent 3 decades maintaining a prison he thought was a protective barrier. What are you going to do? He asked. I pulled out my phone and opened a browser, searched for retail employee disappearances, found dozens of reports, hundreds, people vanishing during closing shifts at electronics stores across the country. Some from years ago, some from last week. I'm going to save them, I said. All of them. I'm writing this from a Motel 6 outside Amarillo, sitting on a bed that smells like cigarettes and industrial cleaner. My laptop shows a map of Texas, with red pins marking every electronics store where employees vanished during closing shifts. There are 43 pins, 43 places where reality got thin enough for people to fall through. The RadioShack network collapsed completely. Every store connected to the 1984 satellite system went dark simultaneously, their electronics fried beyond repair. Most of them were already on their last legs, dying relics of a bygone era. Corporate called it a freak power surge and used it as an excuse to finally close the remaining locations. They don't know the truth. Nobody does except me, Dale, and the people who were trapped. Dale retired the day after the Odessa store imploded, moved to Arizona to live with his daughter. We talk sometimes late at night when the guilt gets too heavy. He's still processing what he did, maintaining the network that imprisoned people for 3 decades. I tell him he thought he was doing the right thing. He tells me that doesn't make it hurt less. Patricia texts me occasionally from whatever frequency space she and the others occupy now. The messages come through corrupted, full of static and symbols my phone can't properly display, but I can usually figure out what she's saying. They're building something in the spaces between dimensions. A place for people who don't fit in normal reality anymore. She says it's peaceful. Says they finally understand the static, can shape it into whatever they need. I asked her once if she missed being human. She didn't respond for 3 days. Then, I miss coffee. I miss the smell of rain. I miss my mother's voice. But I don't miss being trapped. I'll take freedom in the static over imprisonment in the real world. The other networks are harder to find. Best Buy never fully implemented satellite systems in the 80s, so their stores stayed clean. But Circuit City, Comp USA, even some of the old service merchandise locations, they all experimented with similar technology. I've tracked down 7 confirmed dead zones so far, places where the electromagnetic fields warped reality just enough to trap people. I've learned to build Patricia's device from memory now, improved it, made it more portable. Each time I find a dead zone, I set up the cascade, overload the network, and watch the spaces collapse. More people freed, more prisons destroyed. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing. Dale's warning echoes in my head. What if the dead zones were containment? What if I'm releasing something dangerous? But then, I get a text from someone new. Someone who just escaped after 15 years of being trapped in a Circuit City break room that existed between 1996 and forever. They thank me. They tell me they can feel some might again, even if it's through the filter of static. They tell me freedom is worth any risk. My aunt still thinks I'm working at the RadioShack in Odessa. She doesn't know the store doesn't exist anymore. I send her rent money and tell her the night shift is going fine, just boring. She worries about me being alone in an empty store all night. She doesn't know I'm hunting ghosts across Texas, tearing down networks that trap people in retail purgatory. The fax machine from the Odessa store survived somehow. I found it in my truck the morning after the collapse, sitting in the passenger seat like it had always been there. It doesn't connect the phone lines anymore. Doesn't need to. It prints messages from Patricia and the others, keeping me updated on which networks to target next. Last night, it printed coordinates for an old comp USA in El Paso. The message said 17 people are trapped there, have been since 1998. The dead zone is unstable, starting to collapse on its own. I'm leaving in the morning. I've got Patricia's device in the trunk, along with enough electronic equipment to overload any network I find. The retail grid that accidentally created nightmare dimensions is dying. I'm just helping it along, and I won't stop until every dead zone is closed and every trapped soul is free.